So this week we bring you a special episode of Quality Digest Live from IMTS in Chicago, and as you can tell, there's a lot going on here. We're just a lot of hustle and bustle, and we're running around behind the scenes here. So it's very exciting here at IMTS.
It is, and we're here again, IMTS. We're going to be talking about manufacturing, technology, and innovation, and hey, we're live from the floor of the show. So all that and more when we come back.
You guys like doing this, don't you? Do you?
Today's sponsor of Quality Digest Live is Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon carries the widest range of quality brands. With an extensive support network, Hexagon is also your partner. Hexagon Metrology. We are metrology.
Wow, welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 11th, 2012. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yes, he is. That's Dirk. And I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. And we're joined by another Mike McElroy, Quality Digest contributor and quality consultant. Mike, thanks for being here. We're going to chat with you in a couple of minutes about a recent article of yours that had a lot of interest for the readers out there. But before we get there, Dirk, here we are. This is a humongous place. We're at the McCormick Place Convention Center in Chicago.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and forgive us for some of the excitement and the buzz, because there is a real buzz here in the hall of the show. And you know why? Because manufacturing is back, baby.
That's right.
It's back.
It is back.
But then again, it never left, right? I mean, come on, really.
Hey, you know, I think there's been, you hear a lot of stuff in the mainstream media, and actually we'll get back to that in a bit. You know, kind of the doom and gloom of manufacturing in the U.S. But if you're here, you realize that manufacturing is alive and well, and this really is rebounding.
Oh, it is. It is. And you know, if you've never been to this every other year event, you really got to make it a priority for 2014. This is the place to be if you're interested in manufacturing, machinery, tooling, testing and measurement, additive manufacturing, anything and everything to do with the industry is right here in one of these four truly, I walked it today, truly gargantuan halls, and there are four of them.
You don't want to walk from one side of this to the other.
I did, and I walked from E to W, and there's a lot. There's a lot going on this week. And for instance, in a moment, Dirk is going to be telling you about a presentation that you saw yesterday.
Very interesting.
From SME that really dealt a lot of the future of the industry, future of manufacturing. That's a great piece. We're going to get to that in a moment. But before we do that, I want to take a moment and I want to highlight something that we're going to be doing here that we think you're really going to like. In 2 days, on Thursday, September 13th, we'll be bringing you the latest episode of Technology Live from the joint Faro Technologies Carl Zeiss Industrial Metrology booth, which is booth E5504, which is just right back there.
Right back there.
Somewhere hop, skip, and a football field away.
If you're here, you can't miss it.
You can't, and you shouldn't. This will be a Technology Live like no other, with not one, but two of the industry's leading providers of test and measurement equipment, Zeiss and Faro. Presenters from these two companies will be joined by their power user, Pratt & Miller Racing. You'll hear and see how Pratt & Miller uses both Faro and Zeiss tools on their Le Mans winning Corvette, which is prominently featured in the booth, and you'll be able to see it on the show. Of course, it's all tied together and hosted by our very own Dirk Ducharme, who's going to be moderating the discussion between Zeiss, Faro, and Pratt & Miller.
Right.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. That's Thursday, 2 days from now, Thursday, September 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Again, Thursday, September 13th, and you can register below or via email. We're going to be sending out email blasts on that to watch the show live.
Right, it's going to be great, and I think what's really unique about this particular show is because it is definitely going to be from the customer's perspective. Pratt & Miller Racing, Pratt & Miller Engineering rather, is a joint customer of both Faro and Zeiss, and so not only are you getting a rundown on both Faro's equipment and Zeiss's equipment, but you're also going to hear about what it's like to work with those two companies from the customer's perspective and what it is like to integrate two completely different types of technologies in order to solve engineering problems, and that's really what this show is all about.
And that may be some of what you're encountering too, is how you integrate some different technology you have. So check it out. Again, Thursday, 2 days from now, the 13th of September, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Okay. Well, now, I want to jump on Dirk, and with your permission, of course.
You're going to what?
To jump on Dirk. Jump on to Dirk. No, jump on to this week's feature stories. Thank you, Dirk. Now we're going to start with a piece by truly one of our favorite co-contributors, Mike McElroy. Mike has been writing provocative articles for many years, and many of them have run right here on Quality Digest Media.
Always get a lot of comments.
We always get a lot of comments to your stuff, Mike, and thank you for doing that. Your writings often revolve around lean practices and the enduring wisdom of W. Edwards Deming. Always seems to work its way in there.
It does.
And you know, you always challenge convention, which is something that I really like a lot. You call Chicago, the Chicago area, home.
Yes, I do.
So it was a natural fit for us to have Mike on the show, join us here at IMTS, and talk about stuff that's near and dear to all of our hearts: quality, manufacturing, technology, innovation, all that stuff. So,
sounds good.
Without further ado, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks for being here. How you been?
I've been pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah.
Good. You look good.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Okay. Well, the latest article you wrote for us was called "Making U.S. Manufacturing More Competitive."
Yes.
And that appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And it mentions auto manufacturing, for example. So let's dive right into it. Now, one of the things that you talked about in the piece was this idea of advanced product quality planning, which is APQP, which many people out there certainly know about. Now, it's really being replaced by lean product and process development, LPPD. Kind of a different twist on that. So can you kind of give us a quick overview of what LPPD is all about?
Sure, I can do that. First of all, when I was doing a little bit of stand-up comedy for a while there.
You?
Yes, I did.
Comedy?
I did comedy. And I used to refer to APQP as Advanced People Quit Producing. That was my take on that acronym. But anyway, the difference is in essence, in principally, they're the same. I mean, APQP is still about an LPPD. It's still about cross-functional teams working together to shorten the overall innovation and development cycle.
Right.
Okay? And so they still have the same concept, the same principle. APQP gave us some broad ideas about how to do that. LPPD is basically saying, hey, let's take some of the lean concepts. And shorten up the cycle time, because that's what we're interested in doing, really, is shortening up the cycle time. Okay. So first of all, one thing that might be interesting to do, now this is not part of LPPD,
right,
but one thing that would be interesting for any company to do is to take their, whatever you call the process, your current product and process development process,
right,
and do a value stream map on it.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's crazy. I mean, the amount of waste that's in a typical process for developing new products and processes is just immense. The amount of handoffs from one department or person to another person, it's just immense. And you would see the waste. It takes a long time to do, but you would really see the waste. Now, once you do that, though, you don't have to do that, but once you do that, you can start to say, okay, well, what can we do to improve, and how do we do this? Well, the LPPD process takes into account some of the lean methodologies, like, for instance, daily accountability meetings. Okay. Now, a daily accountability meeting on the production floor is truly daily. In the design process, it might not be daily. It might be every other day or once a week. It depends on the project, and it depends on the scale of the project and the risk of the project and the immediacy of the project itself. So you can take that and use the concept of daily accountability meetings, where the team, the cross-functional team, does meet on a frequent basis. Okay. And the reason for that is for communication, primarily. Communication, so that we know exactly where everyone stands at every point in time, and we don't have to wait for the next iteration. So oftentimes what happens is there might be a design review meeting, and that might be for a month out. But during that time, some actions may be going down the wrong path, and you don't see what's really happening until that design review meeting.
Here's the question: who's making the decisions to take it down that path? Is it just happening because the process is so complicated and people are making arbitrary decisions within that framework, or
yes,
is it kind of directed to be that way?
It's making arbitrary decisions within that framework, because an engineer, whether it's a design or a manufacturing engineer, still will have the general gist of what the team wants to do and what they want to accomplish, but within that time period, they're still going to be making individual decisions, and they may not be communicating this with the rest of the team members. So, you know, most companies have a typical phase gate approach, right? You go through a phase, there's a gate, and you evaluate a number of different documents and designs and prototypes and the whole bit, and then boom, you go on to the next phase after you get through that gate. So it's an approval process. And that's fine, and that's good. But the problem with that is that it's kind of like in a manufacturing environment, it's a batch. Yeah. You're doing a batch review at the end of every period, which might be 5 periods or 5 gates. And at that batch review, because of the time that has gone by, erroneous decisions may have been made, and now you've lost a couple of months or whatever it might be.
Right.
Okay.
So talk about the better way to do it. So talk about you've done your value stream map and you figured that out. So now you're going to have your meetings every day, as the case may be, or maybe less frequently. So what does that bring you? What does that get you? Other than, I mean, obviously you're in better communication, so you can stay closer throughout the process. But what else does that bring you? What are the other tools that you want to bring into the process?
Well, as part of the daily process, if it's a daily accountability meeting, as part of that, it's all put out on visual management boards. Now, this could be electronic, this could be manual. It depends on your organization and what makes sense. But the most important thing is that it has to be visible, and that's different than accessible. Okay, accessible might be it's in Microsoft Project and it's hidden away in some folder or some file, but everyone says, well, it's there if you want to see it. Well, you can't be there. It has to be out there in the open for everyone to see, so that when you have that meeting, you get together and you start looking at the visual management cues that you might have, whether it's the project timeline, whether it's the status of each phase and every single action that is taking place, whether it's a risk assessment that would be conducted perhaps throughout the entire process, because hopefully risk starts off high or medium high, but as you evolve the project, it goes down and risk depletes with time. It could be the actions that are out there. It could be resources that are visually and openly displayed for everyone, so that they see an engineer's time, manufacturing engineer, process engineer, product engineer, you see their time and their allocation and so forth. And so that's another part of the lean mentality, is visual management and also getting all the problems out there for people to see. Everything has to be visible. All problems have to be visible so that they can be worked upon. Okay.
Well, let me ask you another question. I want to take us in a slightly different tack, because there's a part of your piece that I really thought was interesting, was talking about the relationship between manufacturers and suppliers. Everybody here has suppliers. Everybody here works with a lengthy supply chain in most cases, and you consistently stress the need to improve those relationships. But how do you do that? I mean, we're in a global economy. I mean, gosh, many of these suppliers are literally in every continent of the world. Yeah. So how do you accurately or adequately manage that very complicated process?
Well, there's a number of things that I can talk about in this particular area. First of all, I think it's important to stress that when we do choose our suppliers, in the ideal world, they're in our backyard, right? Sure. And when Honda and Toyota and so forth start coming over to the United States to manufacture vehicles, they also wanted to make sure that their suppliers were right next door to them, right? Why is that? Well, that's to reduce the waste, okay? So I find it interesting, and the companies that I've worked with over the many years, occasionally you'll see them have strategic objectives, and one strategic objective might be to become a leaner organization, whatever that means. That means a lot of different things to different people. And another initiative might be to start looking into the possibility of offshoring for whatever reason. Okay. Well, what we have to understand is those are two different initiatives based on two different principles, and they're at odds with each other. Because typically, I'm not saying all the time, but typically, when you do offshore, you are saying we are accepting waste. Okay. Oftentimes, when we first initially offshore, and this is changing over time, but typically we have more defects to contend with. But that's a waste. But
the counter argument there is that we save a lot in cost, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're gonna spend less in dollars right now, but will you spend more in dollars later? Is the question that we really have to kind of understand.
Right. And so all the waste, you get overproduction and waiting and inventory and transportation, all that adds up. So what we need to be looking at is not just cost, not just what we need to be looking at total cost of ownership.
Right. Redefine cost, right?
Redefine cost, yeah.
Right.
And the way we should have been all the time. And Harry Moser does a great job with this. He's got a TCO, or total cost of ownership estimator, that's free. Anyone can contact him and grab that. But it takes into account the cost of money, the cost of inventory, the cost of the inventory, whether it's if it's safety stock or it's in transit. It takes into account quality and rework and loss of intellectual property and capital appreciation and on and on and on. And we have to take into consideration all of those costs, because you know what? In a way, we kind of do that, but we assume all those other costs are zero.
Right.
And that's the worst error that we can make. If we assume all of those are zero, then we are making an estimate that's very erroneous. I would rather see someone make a good guesstimate and then argue and debate it and find out what the costs are. See, because we tend to, like you were kind of alluding to, I mean, you can build a product or components right in your backyard, and then outsource it or get some get some quotes from overseas, China, India, whatever, and it might be 50% less. And you say, well, geez, that's a no-brainer.
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
You just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Someone says, well, what about the quality? Well, so what? We reject 10%, no big deal.
Right.
Well, it is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Because there's tons of costs associated with that.
And it's not just 10%. It's not just
Yes.
10% of the overall cost. There's a lot of other factors. But I understand why this happens. They're very hard to quantify those costs.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And it's very hard to do that. So how do you do that?
Well, again, the worst thing would be to say it's $0, which
right.
is what we all do. A lot of us do.
But go on the other end. Okay, so is it $100? Is it $1,000? Is it
There are ways of
$100,000?
doing that, and the total cost of ownership estimator that I was referring to before gives you some guidelines on how to address that. And there's a lot of articles that are coming out because a lot of people are trying to refocus and say, come on, let's bring manufacturing back to the United States. In fact, a lot of companies have just realized this because their profits aren't skyrocketing after they start offshoring to other countries. And so now we're starting to reshore, onshore, and they're starting to realize that these costs are real and they're there. And there are ways to quantify it. Some are more difficult than others.
Yep.
But again, I would rather say it's a percentage of the overall cost is due to intellectual property lost or the potential of it than say 0%. And then we debate that figure. And then we look at figures, yes.
I mean, playing devil's advocate on this a little bit is, I think you can make a really strong argument, though, is that if you're dealing with your suppliers overseas, and the idea is, look, they're 50% less, and even acknowledging that there's extra costs associated with rejects and everything that happens with that, I would still say then you should still be trying to lean that process out, because then you'll even maximize more of your profits. I mean, so not only will it be costing you 50% less just in the raw materials and the labor costs and so forth, but you can drive that even lower if you're making sure that your offshore supplier is doing things the way they should and getting rid of all the waste that they can as well.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that'd be the best of both worlds. I mean, you get lower cost labor and better quality or improved quality, assuming that you can work with that supplier and do that.
Absolutely. And you know what? And really, what this is about, it's not anti-offshoring. That's not what it's about. It's about making wise decisions. And I think in the past there's been many organizations, and that's why they're bringing it back. They've realized that they have not made wise decisions. If the wise decision is to spend a lot more money on travel and have people sit in another country and babysit that process until they understand it, until the quality levels are at that level, that's fine. Yeah. If that's the right approach, that's okay. But that's at least coming from the standpoint of we have taken into consideration all the costs that are involved.
And one of the other scary things just dawned on me as we were talking. So you have these companies, they spend their business overseas, and all of a sudden they're not getting the savings that they expected because of the waste you're talking about. So they go, oh my gosh, it wasn't really panning out, not realizing why it's not panning out.
Right.
So they bring their business back to the United States, and now they're still losing money because they still haven't realized the whole problem to begin with was the waste. And it doesn't matter whether it's waste here or waste over there, it's waste.
That's exactly right. I mean, there might be a time where you get some bad product into one of your companies in China or India or wherever it might be, and the bad product comes in and someone says, oh geez, we can't do this, let's bring it back to the United States. But we should be saying, well, wait a minute, why did the bad product come in? What did we do wrong?
What did we do wrong?
Did we not check the certifications? Do we not have controls in place?
Yeah.
Is that our issue? I mean, we should be looking at it. So you're exactly right, but it always comes down to, if you're going to make a move, whether it's onshoring or offshoring, we should be identifying the problem first, getting to the root causes of the problems, and fixing our systems.
Yeah. And then decide whether it makes more sense to be offshore or onshore. Yeah.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, we're at a manufacturing show, but this is not just a manufacturing issue.
No.
I mean, we're increasingly seeing service and transactional organizations as well, call centers. Where do call centers go, right?
Right.
India, right? I mean, so it's a problem in transactional environments as well.
Absolutely.
And it's maybe even harder to quantify it in that environment where the costs are, in theory at least, softer costs, right? Than it would be in actual manufacturing.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated issue.
You know, and Dr. Deming used to say this. I mean, I love some of his quotes when he used to talk about this issue. But he used to say things like that a lot of these costs are unknown or unknowable, which I always thought was interesting, because here you have a statistician and he's talking about numbers, and all of a sudden he's saying, no, they're unknown and they're unknowable. But he also said any good management system has to take them into account. You have to find a way to take them into account. You cannot ignore them.
So you do just take a shot at it? Is that what you basically do?
A shot at it is better than saying $0.
Sure.
Because when you take a shot at it, then you debate.
Yeah.
Then you discuss. And someone might say, no, it can't be 2% of the total cost. It's impossible. And then you back it up and so forth, and you arrive at some number. But whatever it is, it's going to be better than zero.
Yeah, it makes you start looking at it.
It makes exactly.
Yeah. Even if it's just a wild-ass guess, it's still you're going to start looking at it and trying to figure out, does it make sense? Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely.
and that's
zero.
what
You just kind of wipe it out of your mind.
Exactly, and that's what you want. You want that internal debate. You want to address things like, is there really a threat with intellectual property? Can we lose our intellectual property? Can we lose our design rights? Can we lose whatever it might be? I mean, we've seen that happen with so many American companies where they've gone and they've offshored and they've lost everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a lot of risk there. A lot of risk.
It
involved.
is tremendous.
I'm glad to hear you mention Dr. Deming, because you are a true devotee of the wisdom of W. Edwards Deming.
I don't even know what that word means.
Well, it means you like the guy.
Okay.
He wasn't the most likable guy in the world, maybe. I don't know. I never met him, but you respect the thought process that is talked about in Deming's books, in Deming's lectures. Yeah. And you actually do. I haven't seen it myself, but I hear you do a bang-up Deming presentation yourself, where you embody the soul and spirit and voice and everything of the good late doctor.
Thank you.
What would Deming? You're asked this question a zillion times a day, I'm sure. What would Deming say about what we're seeing here today? What would Deming say about the state of American manufacturing, and how it can be improved? Maybe it's been improved a little bit in the last year or two. We seem to be hearing that. But what would he say about the state of it right now?
Wow.
I'm not going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, you already did. Too late.
Too late for that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. What would he say? I think he would be pleased in some areas, okay? And again, we're going back, if we compare it to when he wrote his book, Out of the Crisis, 1982, so we're going back 30 years now. And I think that there would be some areas that he is pleased in, pleased with. Especially some of the efforts that we've made with regard to respect for individuals. I think he would be on board with a lot of the things we've done with the lean movement, because you got to understand that a lot of the lean movement, which came from the Toyota production system, a lot of that came from Dr. Deming, and how Dr. Deming affected that. So of course, those companies that are doing a good job and truly doing a good job and truly understanding the principles and the culture behind lean, I think he would be pleased with that. Of course, there's still some areas that we don't do a good job with and we can improve upon. It could be driving out fear out of the organization. I don't think we have the same fear that we had in the organization 40 years ago, but I think it's still there, and it's manifested itself in different ways. Because I do think that in some companies, people are still afraid to speak up and speak out and do what's right for the company. And they're afraid to be embarrassed, and they're afraid to try new things and so forth. And I think that does happen in some organizations. Deming would say cease dependence on inspection, and a lot of us, look, this is what a lot of the show is about, is inspection, right?
Right.
And so you see that here, he didn't say get rid of inspection. There's a lot of people think that he did say that. No, he said cease dependence on it, because it's like a drug. I mean, that's the problem, is that you have a problem, let's inspect some more. You have another problem, let's have someone inspect their inspector's work, and it keeps going on and on and on.
Well, you can't inspect quality. It's the old saw. You cannot inspect quality into a product.
Of course not.
Yeah,
of course not. So we should be making efforts at trying to rely less on inspection, which might be other systems, or do it at the source, quality at the source, with vision systems, as we see in the show and so forth. As the product's being made, inspect it right away, immediately. That way you're killing two birds with one stone. You're not doing mass inspection. But mistake proofing, okay? Are we better at mistake proofing? I think we are. I think we're better at mistake proofing. But again, we still have a long way to go. So that's kind of what's neat, is that there's still so much more room for improvement. I still think that the economic downturn that we had recently, a lot of it is due to short-term thinking. And Dr. Deming's point number one, which I think was the most important, is create constancy of purpose towards the improvement of product and process, and innovate. And do those types of things that will sustain the company and provide jobs to the community. Obviously, we've had a lot of companies who have gone belly up. A lot of our whole infrastructure and so forth was based on short-term thinking. relaxed lending standards, manipulating the financial system to spread the risk amongst many different companies. Everyone thought that they were immune to any kind of downturn because it was spread out, but it was all about short-term thinking, and that's the killer. That is just the absolute killer. It's the short-term thinking, it's the greed. So in that respect, I don't think we're any better than we were perhaps 30 years ago. So I think Dr. Deming, again, overall, would look at this show and say, good, you're still in the game, America. You're still doing a good job. I mean, we can do a lot better, though. And he wouldn't use those words because he was not that positive. But he says we could do a lot better. I think he would really think that we could do a lot better. And the progress, because he wrote that the long, thorny road was 10 to 30 years, and here it is 30 years after he wrote that.
Yep.
And I think he would be saddened by how much we've progressed, but yet still encouraged.
Yep. Well, Mike, great stuff as always from you, and thought-provoking. You always give us something to chew on, and yeah, no, good stuff here as always. And I want you to stick around because Dirk actually is going to report now on a presentation you attended a few days yesterday, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting that you guys are talking about manufacturing because. And that manufacturing is coming back because this is something that's been very interesting to Quality Digest for a while. And according to a lot of our clients, our advertising clients, that we've been speaking throughout the past year or so, and to companies we've been speaking to here at IMTS, and to a lot of many industry groups like AMT and SME, manufacturing is back. And this seems to contradict a lot of the doom and gloom we hear, on mainstream media. That there's, not that there isn't a leak of manufacturing jobs overseas. Obviously there is. A lot of jobs are going overseas. Or even that business is booming. Obviously it isn't booming. But nationwide, manufacturing does seem to be on a really serious rebound.
Yes.
And so now one of the key issues, according to the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, SME, is filling these jobs. I mean, according to Janine Kuntz, Director of Marketing and Professional Development for SME, today's big manufacturing issue is finding qualified workers. Says Kuntz, this crisis, finding workers, is alive and real in industry, end quote. So what SME actually is doing something about it. At a press conference on Monday, SME laid out 6 key recommendations in order to build up the manufacturing workforce in the United States. Number 1, attract more students to manufacturing. 2, articulate an agreed-on core of manufacturing knowledge. One of the issues that they have is like a lot of people are being trained manufacturing skills and manufacturing knowledge, but it actually isn't consistent. It varies from one curricula to the other. So improve, number 3, the quality and consistency of manufacturing curriculum. 4, integrate manufacturing topics into STEM education. We talk a lot about STEM. STEM is the science, technology, engineering, and math that is being introduced and has been introduced for quite a while through 6 through 12, or is it? 6 through 12.
6 through 12, yep.
Number 5, develop a faculty that delivers world-class manufacturing education. And finally, 6, strategically deploy existing and new resources to accomplish these goals.
It's a very ambitious series of projects.
It is. It's a very ambitious, but SME is actually involved in probably every one of those steps. But the one I want to touch on first is that very first item, attract more students to manufacturing. At this press conference, one of the most inspiring presentations was by Dr. Lazaro Lopez. Lopez is a principal for Wheeling High School in Wheeling, Illinois, not too far from here. Currently, he has 300 students learning manufacturing-related skills. 26 are taking classes at a brand new, I think it's only a year and a half old, fully loaded manufacturing lab at the high school. Now, they literally had to scrape this together. I mean, I asked them, so they got CNC equipment, they got inspection equipment, they got all sorts of tools, right? I said, well, was this a grant? And he said, well, no. He says, there's grants out there, but he says, basically, it's looking at equipment being sold to us at a lower cost. Maybe it's used equipment. The manufacturers are coming to us, say, hey, we've got a used CNC. We'll sell it to you, at a good price and that sort of stuff. So it's basically scraping together this manufacturing lab at the high school. immediately they started getting students signed up for it.
Sure.
So right now, they've got 26 students learning hands-on manufacturing skills at this manufacturing lab. A dozen of the past students have already landed jobs in manufacturing locally. Now get this, 2 of these students, according to Dr. Lopez, 2 of these students were students that were actually doing poorly in school. They probably would have dropped out of high school until this whole curricula opened up, and all of a sudden they discovered something that they had a passion for, that they knew they could do, and that they wanted to do this.
And that is a well-paid job.
These are well-paid. Now, the interesting thing, Lopez says that, and other surveys show that the average, keep in mind this is the average machining job in the U.S., manufacturing job in the U.S., pays $74,000 a year. Now, keep in mind, the low end starts at 40, the upper end may be in the 6 digits, the low 100s. But
I mean, it's not nowhere close to publishing or consulting.
Oh yeah, because those pay great.
Sure.
But if you want a real good paying job, you're going to publishing.
Sure. Hey,
I'm making the bucks here, people. But the average job is 75 grand. So he's got 2 kids coming out of high school who probably would have dropped out of high school, and they landed themselves a job in manufacturing, and they're making good money doing something they love, with a real future.
Real future, yep. Great stuff.
So, the moral to this whole story, I think, by the way, this was really inspiring. Oh, the other thing, it isn't just Wheeling High School. This actually is going out. There are institutions like this all across the United States, high schools that are starting to embrace kind of a vocational direction for manufacturing, and starting to bring these courses together in order to provide jobs for high school students, or maybe get them interested in going on to higher degrees in junior college or college, but feeding into the workforce. So there's a lot of young people who might be interested in the hands-on type of skills that you can get in a manufacturing job if they're given the chance. Okay, the tools and the curricula and the schools and the educators that are willing to buck the system in order to offer manufacturing intensive courses. And trust me, Lopez points out, this was not an easy sell.
Right.
I mean, he's the principal of this high school. He's trying to go to the parents and saying, hey, look, we want to open up a manufacturing lab. And they're pointing to all the media stuff saying, why in the heck do you want to do that? Everybody knows the manufacturing jobs are going overseas. Why do you want to spend the money on a manufacturing lab for something that's dying? I mean, that's basically the feedback this guy was getting.
Wow.
And so he basically,
we know how wrong that is.
But we know how wrong. I mean, we're talking to people every day that are saying, we need skilled workers.
Yeah. Wow.
It's crazy. I mean, so it was exciting. I mean, it was just listening to him talk about these students and their passion once they were given the opportunity, and the knowledge that there is stuff out there for somebody who doesn't want to go to college, maybe, or even if they want to go to college, that look, there is something that involves me and what I'm interested in, which is working with my hands and building stuff. It was fun. It was inspiring. It was really cool.
It's just so great that SME is doing that. I mean, and we support that. We talked about STEM education a lot, and the CMFC, another group that we work with, is actively involved in trying to promote good jobs and education.
And ASQ has been doing it for a long time. I mean, I think there's a lot of the organizations, the industry organizations. I mean, they're hearing from their constituents that, guys, we need people. And so these organizations are starting to step up. Step up to the plate.
Isn't it also true? I mean, this is what I've seen too, though, that you have that negative societal stigma, and
wants to work in manufacturing?
Right, it's got a bad reputation. It's got a bad rep, especially when the media feeds into it. That manufacturing is going overseas. But even regardless of that, what you have now is you have a lot of kids. They've grown up in the social media age and social media era, and they're very highly technologically motivated, and they think manufacturing, well, that's not.
I'm going to be spinning lug nuts.
Yeah, I'm going to be assembling things with my hands. I'm not going to be using my brain, and it's so not true.
Not that.
But that's still the stigma. That's still the. So did he talk about that? Did he talk about how to erase some of that? How we can? How could a lot of us can erase some of that negative stigma?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the trick, and matter of fact, he didn't specifically talk about it, but others we have spoken to have, which is exactly what you're talking about, is kids have got this idea, young people have got this idea that manufacturing is kind of this dirt under the fingernails, screwing stuff together, whatever. They aren't being shown that today's manufacturing environment is very high tech.
Absolutely.
And they're looking for people with these skills in skills in electronics and computers and all that, because I mean, you come to this show and you look around, I mean, this is nothing but high tech. I mean, even just the strictly manufacturing equipment is super high tech stuff. And it's a perfect fit for that student who's got an interest in high technology and mechanics at the same time. It's like the best of both worlds.
Sure.
And I think that is the problem, is they aren't being shown that.
Yeah.
They aren't being shown that.
It's incredible. You know, this is the future of our industry. Are these people that are maybe not coming into the industry in the numbers that we'd like to see them come into, and I think it totally is another one of these perception versus reality issues we talk about all the time. That for whatever reason, people just don't know that you can have a great career doing this.
And the odd part about it is, I talked about onshoring and reshoring before, and you do hear stories of onshoring and reshoring people from other countries, bringing them in from other countries. The United States, like, no, that's crazy.
That's crazy. We have so many people that need good jobs, and the good jobs are here.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, and that's a great point to touch on. Is, I mean, we're behind in terms of educating our young people for the same things that they are being educated for in India and in China and so forth. I mean, they're being raised up knowing how to do this stuff.
Right.
I mean, they've got an active workforce that is, they're ready to come over here and start working.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we're trying to gear up still, it seems like. You know?
Exactly. Catch up,
Because, it's amazing.
That's good stuff.
Okay.
And we're going to continue to have these discussions. Mike, I know you're going to continue to write about them for us, and we're going to continue to bring them to our audience out there, both on this show as well as in Quality Digest Daily. Okay, well, that's the show for this week.
That was a great show.
That was a great show.
Woo!
Here in IMTS in Chicago.
Go manufacturing.
Exciting stuff. We hope we fired you up too. But now, before we close, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Hexagon Metrology. Stay one step ahead of the changing world. Hexagon Metrology is the largest player in dimensional metrology, and they're committed to tailoring a solution to fit your needs. But they're not just about quality equipment. Hexagon's service and support team is there when you need them, guaranteeing that they're more than a supplier, they're your partner. Please take a moment to visit www.hexmet.us/QD312D to learn more, or just click on the banner just below or just to the right of the player page right there. Thank you, Hexagon. And thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
For being here and joining us on this special edition of Quality Digest Daily. Quality Digest Live, I should say.
Quality Digest Live.
Right, that's right.
That's right. So you watched us here live today, and we wish you could be here at IMTS. This really is an exciting show. There's a lot going on, a lot of people, a lot of buzz, too.
That's right.
Very good show. Mike, thanks for being on the show with us.
That's you. Thanks, Mike.
Mike, thank you.
Good seeing you.
And we'll see you all at the next QDO.
And we'll see you on Thursday. Again, Thursday.
Yes, Technology Live.
Technology Live, 2 days from now. Just check out your email. You'll see a link, and check it out and register for that event on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific.
Right.
We'll see you then.
So long.